Recently, I've been down bad on content thinking of any challenge runs I can do, where I finally just thought I could sample one of my Dark Souls Remastered challenge runs and put in Elden Ring with a little bit of a twist. So in today's video, I'm going to be trying to beat Elden Ring with a challenge added on to every single boss. Now that can sound a little bit vague, so to go into a little bit more detail, I'm going to beat Elden Ring, and every single time I beat a boss, I will get a new challenge added on top of the challenge I had previously. And to be quite honest, there's a lot of bosses, and I'm very, very bad at this game, so there's going to be a lot of struggling, and the challenges aren't going to be absolutely game-breaking. It's not going to be like no hit while one-shotting only while not being able to roll. It's going to be something more like no torrent, no weapons or equipment under 5 pounds, and having to use Shibiriwo and stuff like that. And with all that yapping out of the way, it's time to start the run. I firstly head towards the castle ruins or whatever it's called to get torrent, and then I grab the map because I do not know Limgrave by heart, and I'm basically gonna just ride this horse for a little while until I eventually stumble upon that teleporter that teleports you to Caelid. That way I can get a medallion so I can skip past Limgrave, and that way I can kill the giant dragon for a shit ton of souls. And I'm pretty sure I won't be able to use the Wanderer's Physic, because every single special effect you get out of it is from killing another boss, and I just don't think it's worth getting another challenge just for a little effect. I eventually get to Fort Ferrith, where I run past all the enemies, straight up the ladder to get that medallion, and luckily this time I was not going for the Radagon source heal, because if I was, I would have ended up getting raped by some giant rats. I then start progressing the other way through Limgrave, that way I can skip the castle and go straight to Liurnia. And after getting my first death to some not so good parkour, I'm finally by the lakes. I then run past and skip everything inside this lake to get to the Glintstone Key, and I also pay a visit to the blacksmith. And then I start my journey towards Stormveil Castle. And the shit clearly did not hit me, but whatever. Once I finally made it past that bow, cannon, whatever you want to call it, I decided to attempt Morgott, and it did not go so well. I think this boss is just a really hard boss to have in early game, and on top of that, I have not played this game in around 2 years, so I was getting absolutely violently butt raped. Like, he was light till he got to that second phase, and once he got to that second phase, I stood no chance. I was dying so much to the point where I just called that quits and started heading throughout Liurnia to get to the academy. And I'll tell you right now, I did not fight a single enemy in this area. But that did not stop me from getting absolutely violated by this boss. Like, I've been grinding the Dark Souls for the last 2 years, and I completely forgot how much faster and harder hitting the bosses in this game are. And I knew I was not beating this boss at my current build, because this game is totally based off how strong your build is, not really necessarily how good you are, even though that is very important. The build is by far the most important. So I thought, what better way to get strong and kill everybody than to get Bloodhound's Fang? And honestly, I've never used Bloodhound's Fang before, surprisingly. So I decided, this is the perfect chance to use Bloodhound's Fang and actually kill some bosses. And I just can't use the weapon. I also decided to go to whatever castle this is and pick up the medallion there. And I decided now is the perfect time to make my way up to the Atlas Plateau. And while we're doing this, I'll show you the challenge that I got from killing that boss. And yeah, so for every boss I beat, I'm going to be spinning this wheel for a challenge. And later on, like mid-game for example, I'm going to add a little spot in there that allows me to re-roll a challenge of my choice later on, just in case I get a really hard one. And just like that, I'm already in the inner part of the capital, where I'm greeted with 2 golden seeds. And then I finally head back to Liurnia to beat the boss. But I can't use Bloodhound's Fang just yet. So instead of going to kill the dragon like I would always do, I just for some reason started farming these enemies, which was a little bit of a slow process, but it got the job done. And the damage I was doing wasn't too bad, but this weapon is so slow for a boss this fast, and my HP is very low. And even though I was dying a shit ton, I didn't really feel like I was struggling, because one mistake automatically meant I was dead, and I was kind of learning its attacks even though I was getting shit on. And on the other side, if I'm kind of struggling here with no challenges and on an easy boss, I'm cooked for Maliketh and Radagon. After struggling for a little bit, I went back to farm these guys a couple times for a couple more level ups into health, and that really made a difference. On my first round with a little bit more health, I shat on this guy. I then drop all my equipment weighing under 5 pounds, including armor and weapons, and I also spend the remainder of my souls on some somber smithing stones and to level up health a little bit. And the challenge I got for beating that magic dog is no weapons or armor weighing below 5 pounds, which is why I dropped all my shit back there. And then I ran to this guy right here, which I've never ever been able to kill, so I try running past him and going straight up the elevator, which does not work. And at this point I realize I'm just gonna fight Radahn instead of going through Stormveil, because that's one less boss, which means one less challenge. And in order to fight Radahn, and maybe a little bit for the last spots at the academy, I need a little bit more HP. So that's what I plan on getting, and I plan on getting that by farming this dragon right here. And luckily, I have the Bloodhound's Fang, so I get to chopping away. And guys, please, I'm very down bad. Can you please subscribe and perhaps even like? I would appreciate that a lot. I put a lot of time in this video, and yeah, thanks for watching. And with my 74,000 souls, I buy the Somber Smithing Stone 3 and 4 for that extra juicy damage boost, and then I put the rest into health. And a little bit of dex and strength for that extra scaling. And now it's time for Rennala, and I make the mistake of trying to fight this guy. And this guy's just Mr. John Perry. I'm eventually able to just run past him, and somehow he just falls underneath the elevator and he dies, and I will gladly take that. And for Rennala, you just slice 3 gold bubble people, then you slice at her for a little bit, she flies back in the air, you repeat the same process with some flying books and some flying torches now. And the first phase is a walk in the park. The second phase is where it gets a little bit tricky because it's very heavily RNG based, but for the most part, it can be pretty tame. You just gotta avoid her Kamehameha and her couple blast explosions and just try to get her in a stagger chain. She'll always back up, but as long as you can stagger her before she does anything else, it'll usually be pretty easy. She did summon a fucking giant, which I thought would have instantly killed me, but he does disappear after like 20 seconds, which thank God. And just like that, I've killed one of the 2 demigods that I need to kill. I then put some stats into Faith, and I assume you know what I'm going to do with that. And as I'm heading to get Blood Flame Blade, I'll show you what challenge I got, and that is no weapon special attack. It's definitely not the worst challenge, but I'm not going to lie, the whole point of this weapon is to kind of spam the special attack and hope you get lucky. I then stunlock this little rolling thing to get the Blood Flame Blade, and then I start my journey to get to Radahn. And I always find the navigation of this place a little annoying, because from Fort Ferrith I always go down this path, and it always seems like you can get down and go to Radahn's area from there, but it's always just a little bit too high. And eventually I realize I cannot make it from here, so I wrap around and go across the entire map, and I'm pretty sure I can just go into Radahn's castle and get teleported to the end, because I've been to Atlas Plateau. But yeah, that whole time frame's also a little confusing to me too, but you know what, I'm just gonna go with the flow. And before Radahn, I decide to sell all my shit that I can't use, or just don't want to use, that way I can buy a talisman. And I know a talisman is under 5 pounds, but like I'm not gonna count that, I'm only counting like actual weapons and armors, because then I couldn't use any spells or any miracles. And those are challenges that I can get disincluded later on. And before Radahn, I'm trying to find a Somber Smithing Stone +7. That way I can absolutely shred his health bar. And I'm pretty sure fighting this guy is the only way to get a Somber Smithing Stone 7 before the snowy area. The first try doesn't go so well, but on my second try I'm able to kill this guy, and I don't really know why I struggled with him at all in the first place. And that was also my mistake from earlier, I was only trying to get my weapon to +6 at this point. And with it at +6, it's finally time for the Radahn Festival. But on my second try, we actually were fucking this guy up, until his second phase. And on my third try, I was finally able to dodge that meteor and put Radahn down for good. For good. And now that 2 of the demigods have fallen, I get to progress through the capital, and luckily for me, I get to fight the Draconic Tree Sentinel. And I thought they patched this, but I'm actually able to sneak past him. But that honestly only gets me 1 free hit. And if you look at the damage I'm doing, it is not so good. But I actually do almost get him on my first try, which gave me some inspiration to fight him a couple more times. And honestly, I was so close again. And after just those 2 deaths, I decided the best way and only way to go about this was cheesing him. So I run all the way from Limgrave, all the way to the Weeping Peninsula to get some Poisoned Mist. Also guys, tell me in the comments what's the hardest Souls game, and or what's your favorite Souls game, and also anything I can do better about this video, any suggestions, any ideas, anything like that. And soon enough, I finally make it to this little roly-poly guy, I don't know what the fuck they're called, and this guy is a little teleporter, which was pretty annoying, but thank God I don't have to go to a Greece and reset it every single time I want to fight him. And the first try of cheesing did not go so well. I also realized that I could not miss any of the poison mist because I did not have enough FP, so after missing a couple, I just surrendered myself and went and retried that. And after doom scrolling TikTok and poisoning him for about 10 minutes, I get him low enough to the point where I think it's not that risky to go up to him and slash him to death. And after all this time, I can finally enter the capital. I then put my newly found runes into some health and some endurance. That way I'm able to wear my heavier armor while being able to roll, because you know I can't use any light armor. And if I'm being quite honest with you, I don't think I killed a singular enemy in this area besides that one mushroom man I killed a couple feet back. So honestly, we can just skip to Godfrey. And on my way there, I killed this little guy right here, which gives me a chest piece that I can actually use. And I don't really even know if it was better than my current armor, but I wanted some variety because I was tired of looking at this same chest piece the entire run. And well, after putting on my buff, my first try does not go so well. And this boss does have some pretty detrimental combos where if he hits you once, it's either guaranteed he's going to hit you again, or it has really bad timing, whereas if you get hit once, you want to spam roll, and once you spam roll, he's going to catch you out of that roll. And I honestly thought I was not doing enough damage, so I went to the supers to get a +7, and then I went to Caleb to get a +8, and I went again to Caleb to get a +9. This fight really seems to have a lot of questionable hitboxes. Like, I really did not think that hit. And then after dying one more time, I kind of realized that if you just stick close to him and don't do any unnecessary risky movements and just like let this guy do his attacks and attack back, this fight is so easy. After I just applied that, I beat this guy first try, after applying that, and with only getting hit once. And now it's time to fight the actual Morgott, which I honestly think can be either one of the easiest or one of the hardest fights that you'll encounter. Firstly, because of his moveset. I think he has the most punishing, most unpredictable, most delayed, the most he gives you no frames to attack him. He's always hitting you. You have no time to attack him, yada yada. It's one of the most hardest movesets to fight, and he does a shit ton of damage, and half the time he just dodges your attacks. But I do think he doesn't have a lot of health, and this fight is all in your control. These are one of the boss fights where you can actually dictate the fight a lot, especially if you have Morgott's Shackle. That's because, first off, he has very little poise, so you can knock him down a lot, you can bleed him, and with Morgott's Shackle, you can force him to lay on the floor while you attack him. So after getting violently shit on a couple times, I decided to just head back to Limgrave, fight this invader right here, and go into this cave. That way I can quote-unquote kill Patches and get Morgott's Shackle. And actually, since I'm not killing Patches here, I do not get another challenge since he surrenders. So with Morgott's Shackle, I'm ready for round 2. And now with this Shackle, I was able to dictate the fight. What I would do is I would get him so right when he's about to attack me, right when he's right next to me, I'd use the Shackle and start spamming the attacks. And by the time he would get up, I would have inflicted blood loss, which is at least already 1/3 of his health bar. And then he would always raise his hand after that to throw down the spears, whatever you want to call it. And then with that, I would either use the Morgott Shackle again to get him on the floor, that way I can bleed him, or I would just stun him out of that and get a free riposte. Either way, it's just a free entry to get to phase 2, which honestly phase 2 is a lot harder and I got raped a lot of times here. I also did take a couple unnecessary deaths by using the Morgott Shackle at the wrong time, and by using it in phase 2, which I totally did not know at the time does not even work in phase 2. And I kept getting this guy low so many times, but I don't know what about his second phase. I can barely even hit him in his second phase. So even though this Morgott Shackle is getting 80% of his health, I'm still getting shit on. But eventually with a lot of luck, I'm finally able to take Morgott, the Omen King, down. And now it's time for my least favorite area in the game, that is the snow area. And as you can see on the right side, wherever I'm putting the spinning wheel, I got no torrent, which obviously does not make the game harder or impossible, but just a lot more tedious, especially now that I've run through the entire fucking snowy area and fight Fire Giant without torrent. So, the weather, it's nice today. And I actually totally forgot this little tiny area existed. I don't think anyone else remembered this little place either. I'm pretty sure its sole purpose is to be a transitional area between the capital and the snow area. And besides this annoying ass bird that I could not hit fucking me up, I did nothing with any sort of relevance or importance in my 30-minute walk. And honestly, doing this run and editing it and all that shit was actually really fun, besides when I got to Maliketh. So if you guys have any suggestions or like this type of shit, just tell me, because I have zero creativity and I'm just gonna go off what the best comment says. And at this point right here, I thought the only way to get up top was by using torrent to hop on this thing, which I know was cheating at the time, but I died anyways and I went the regular way after looking it up, so it doesn't really matter. And then I get to the lake and I know I'm not outrunning this dragon in pitch dark or whatever, fucking foggy snow where I can't see anything, so I try to hug the wall and quit out when he spawns in, and that seems to do the trick. But because I'm on foot and I have my Shibiri Woe, a lot of these rat dogs chase me and I kind of have to fight them. And after a total of around 35 minutes of running, I finally get to this church up here, where I have a tough battle with this guy, where this guy drains all my Estus Flask and I almost end up dying. And now it's time for the Fire Giant. And I honestly think this is where my build shines best, because he's not fast enough to dodge any of my attacks, and he's just, most of the time he's just going to sit there and take it. Especially because he's very prone to bleed loss, because he has so much health. This build absolutely destroys him. But honestly, what I'm saying right now doesn't mean a whole lot, because his first phase is very easy and he's basically just a punching bag. The second phase is where it gets a little bit tricky, and that's where I have to rely entirely on blood loss. Now, I don't know what the little trick, I've never, after the entire almost 3 years this game has been out, I've never understood his little gimmick in the second phase where you don't really do any damage unless it's his eye, I'm pretty sure. But I've never once figured out how to hit his eye, so I basically just always apply some blood loss grease or just use a blood loss weapon, and I just hope and pray that it does the trick. And luckily for me, it does. And I think this is the first actual main important boss that I beat on my first try. And with the fire giant dead, I have nothing to do but enjoy my last couple steps on my last little run and head to Crumbling, Farum, Azula. And I'm not gonna lie, there's really not much for me to say about this area. I'm not gonna lie, I did it again, and I kind of just ran past every single enemy till I got to the Godskin duo. And let me tell you, I am not too happy or excited or feel any sort of relative positive emotion about the Godskin duo. I absolutely hate that boss. And I didn't even have to die to him once before deciding that I'm gonna cheese them. So I go grab this cookbook, and then I go to Kate to buy the ability to be able to craft things in general. And I think you know what I'm going to do with this. And what I'm going to do is find some Trina lilies and mushrooms to make some sleep pots. And the one problem with doing this cheese is I only get one chance, because there's such a limited state Trinas, and as I found out earlier, you also have to use cracked pots, and there's such a limited amount of those. There's like a total of 10 in the entire game. So if I mess up one time, I just have to fight them regularly, which I do not want to do. And I also do realize I can get a cracked pot and some mushrooms from Stormville. Since I killed Morgott, I don't have to kill Morgott, so I can explore the entirety of Stormville and all its possessions without killing any more bosses. I also heard there was 4 cracked pots in this Atlas Plateau cave system, and I realized it was one of those things where the giant chariot ran down, and I was not having that. I also went to Jarburg, where I struggled on this jump for about a minute and a half, but once I made it and collected all the jars in this little area, I was ready to cheese Godskin duo. And just like that, a pot was wasted. The annoying part about this cheese is that you have to get right up close and personal with them, because if you throw it from far away, they're just both fast enough and aware enough to just dodge it, which is super annoying. And since these guys do so much damage, they can 2-shot me and they're fast too, it is so risky up close and personal, especially when I have this much on the line. But honestly, with this cheese, this fight was in fact pretty free. So with that, on our second try, or I think our third try, the Godskin duo is dead. And now it's basically back to me just running through everything in this entire area. And while we have this nice leeway time, I would love to advertise you possibly watching this video or this video. Those two are very similar to this video. I spent a lot of time on it, and I personally think those videos are very good. I also stopped to get an ancient smithing dragonstone, whatever the fuck you want to call it, to get my weapon to +10. I also go left instead of right, which results in me dying and having to run back. And once I get to the Grace, there's one thing and one thing only left that I have to do, and that is beat Maliketh. And yes, I know for the first couple tries, I'm gonna look like an absolute bot, because for a lot of his attacks, like, you can't really tell there's gonna be like a second like attack and explosion, unless you've already been with those attacks and dealt with it before. So bear with me on that. And that one fucking attack he keeps where he backs up and throws that little spiral thing or whatever you want to call it, that killed me around 25 times probably, because it's like so unexpected, and he can do it after almost any single move. So like, I learned to predict it during some moves because he always did it, but there was sometimes you kind of just had to guess because he would just randomly do it. And honestly, my build was falling apart here. I could bleed him, and bleeding him did most of, if not all, my damage, but the weapon just regularly in general just did so little damage, and it was so slow. Like, at this point, even when he'd do attacks, I'd have not even enough time to hit him before he does another type of attack, like when he's done with his combo. And half the time he's just moving around so fast and my weapon's so slow, I can't even just like make contact with him. And especially the damage. I've been taking so much damage this boss fight, especially because I can only wear armor above 5 pounds, or whatever the fucking measuring system in this game is. So I could only wear a chest piece and a helmet. And I was getting so mad. I was getting so mad to the point where like every 5 or 10 deaths, I just had to shut off my Xbox and take a 1-hour break. And like, I wasn't even struggling on Maliketh. I was struggling on fucking Beast Clergyman. I got to Maliketh like 1 out of every 12 times around this time. But like later on, I was able to get to him consistently like 1 out of every 6 times. And like, looking back on this, I was playing like such a retard. I just kept going in for the kill. Even though I knew how aggressive and unpredictable this boss is, I would not just like play it safe and wait for attacks. And I think this other part that was so hard about this is that my controller was literally broken. So half the time the sprint button wouldn't work, and like 25% of the time, like, I wouldn't dodge. It was so annoying. And I hated his one-shot attacks so much. I know they're technically not one-shot, but he'd have these things where he'd do like 2 quick hits back to back, and if you got hit by the first one, you're guaranteed to get one-shotted, because the second one would automatically come out. That happened in the first phase for the thing where the boulders come up and down, and he had like one other attack. And in the second phase, that happened too. And I'm just gonna blame the game. It might be just my latency or some shit, but that shit was so annoying. Also, I hate that death blade, or the certain death thing where it just automatically drains your health. and takes away from your total health limit. That shit was so annoying. I've been trying to drag what I've been saying and just talk about totally unnecessary stuff to show you all this gameplay, and after all this dragging and yapping about nothing, I've only shown you about 15 to 20% of my deaths, which is fucking crazy. So I'll just show you a quick death montage while I yap about my strategy for this fight. So basically the strat for this fight was to sprint along the left side of the railing getting into the boss arena. That way the Draconic Tree Sentinel couldn't hit me and rape me before the fight, which sometimes didn't work. Like after I entered the fog wall, he would hit me with like some fire bomb or like little earthquake thing, which is fucking half my health. And then I would apply my resin as Maliketh ran at me. And the goal was to play pretty aggressive because I wanted to bleed him and break his poise because that's how I get all my damage. But playing aggressive like that is why I died all these times. So, you know, either way, I was probably going to get raped anyway because without the poise and blood damage, I stood no chance. And for the second phase, which I think I only got to a total of like 10 or 11 times, what I want to do was like run right up to Maliketh and just try to stay under his ball sack and hug his legs. Because from under his legs, bro, he can like rarely ever hit you. But he would never actually swing his sword at me. He'd hop on the pillars and throw his little shit like that and do his explosions. I also upgraded my Flask of Crimson Tears +2 so I could heal more, because every one of his attacks did more than heal did. And after dying so many times, I decided to kill the Draconic Tree Sentinel, which actually gave me some armor I could use. Now I'm going to play the challenge that I got on the screen right now, because this is the attempt that I beat him on. So yeah, after about 5 hours and over 100 deaths, I finally beat Maliketh, and my reward is no heals. And hopefully I get that chance to respin this challenge for another challenge. There's like a 40% chance of that happening, so I am praying. And also the Bloodhound's Fang weapon falls off so hard. It is a good early game weapon, but once it surpasses mid game, this weapon is so mid. It does so little damage and it's so slow. At this point, the last 25 levels have all gone to Dex and Strength, so I can get that extra damage boost, because although making another build would be so good, it's so hard to do that because I have so little options because I can't fight any bosses, and I do not want to upgrade a weapon again. But luckily for me, the next boss is a boss that I most likely will not need any heals on. He is super easy. As long as you continuously get him to be stunned, I just like to hit him, wait a second to recover my stamina, and hit him again, and you should most likely get him stunned. If he does pop away and do an attack, he actually can kind of rape you, because once he gets away, he can just kind of spam spells that do so much damage and just force you not to go right next to him. So I do die once because of that, but on my second try, I just lock in and make sure to spam him correctly, and he's dead. And now I have only 2 bosses left so I can finally beat this game, but it's like the 2 hardest bosses. So while I show you some Godfrey gameplay and talk about him, I'll show you my spin that I got for the next challenge, and I actually got a respin on my last challenge. And trust me, that shit is actually not rigged. I got lucky, you know, that type of stuff happens. And now it's time for Godfrey, which was a boss I was very scared and skeptical of at first, but honestly, if you just like calm down and fight him, it's super, super light. But needless to say, I died a lot of times. Not as many times as Maliketh, but probably 40-ish times. Now, I like to act like this boss has 3 phases. Firstly, his first phase, which is from like 100% health to 60% health. His second phase, which is from like 60% to 40%. And his actual second phase, Horaloo. Now, his first phase is super easy. All his attacks are super predictable. His jumps are super easy to dodge. Super fun, too. Like, his first phase is honestly one of my favorite boss fights. It just feels so smooth, so nice, and it makes you feel really good. The only problem I have with it is I do run out of stamina a lot, but if you're not that greedy, it's fine. And then there's his 60 to 40% phase, which for me was personally the hardest. I think I died a lot more in Horaloo, but that's because like I panicked and shit. But this phase, he just sprints around the map. He like fucking that Dark Souls 3 special thing that you do through the swamp to go faster. He like does that, stomps, kicks you in so many AoEs that are so hard to dodge. It's just so annoying. I get raped so much in that phase, but luckily for me, a lot of time I had to bleed getting built up, so I rarely had to deal with that phase. And then there was the Horaloo phase, which for me, honestly, I either die 10 seconds within that phase or I get to the very end. The only problem with that phase is his fucking grab attacks. His grab attacks were almost an instant one-shot for me, but once I just kind of learned that his things were all pretty predictable, and just to calm down, the fight was pretty easily, and eventually, Horaloo/Godfrey goes down. And for my final challenge for the last boss was No Miracles, which wasn't too bad, but it was a little bit annoying because Radagon is weak to fire, and that's what my buff is. And I was gonna use the fire giant thing, the flame grant me strength, which was gonna help out a lot, but I can't use that now. And now we're on to Radagon, and he is a tricky little fella. I feel like most of his attacks are pretty dodgeable. It's kind of like the first phase of Godfrey, where it's like stamina is kind of the problem, but all his attacks are pretty easy, pretty manageable. It's pretty fun to fight. But once he gets into that second phase where he starts doing his teleporting, it is so annoying. I feel like some of the attacks are like undodgeable. Like He'll have this attack where he'll like spawn in, like because of the teleportation, and that automatically deals damage if you don't roll. But if you roll, sometimes he comes out of the gate with such a fast attack that'll hit you during that roll, like after he spawns in. And he would just fuck me up with that. The second thing he would fuck me up with is this triple slam thing right here. I think I died, if I'm being completely honest, around 45 times to this single attack. But once I learned to just like, it's very delayed, like you want to roll after the attack already happens, I was finally able to stop dying to the attack. But the thing with Radagon is I rarely ever get hit by him. I always have like all my Estus or like I'm down 1 or 2 when I die. But he just gives you these combos. Like you're most likely gonna dodge all shit, but once he hits you once, he just puts you in the nastiest combo ever. And you can rarely ever heal in this fight. Like, if you just try to heal, he'll just hit you twice and kill you. So at this point, like, if I'm one shot, I just keep fighting and just don't even try to. But at first, this fight was not so easy for me. I think I died around 55 to 60 times before I even got to Elden Beast once. And then I got raped by Elden Beast a couple times. So in total, I can't show all the gameplay because that would take forever. But I died around like 160 times to Radagon, and about 10 times to Elden Beast. And for Radagon, I just decided, since all my challenges so far have been pretty easy, I decided there's gonna be no heals on Radagon, since I already died so much, and at this point I was able to pretty much flawlessly get him every time. But for some reason, the Elden Beast just kept getting me. Like, he didn't kill me that many times, but like, I just could not do the no heal challenge because he just hit me so many times, especially with the star thing that fell out of the sky. And that other thing with that star orb that chases you, that was so annoying. I died of that so many times because I can't see anything and he's swinging at me with all those special effects. And that happened for Radagon a lot too. When he did the teleporting shit, I could not see anything and he would just charge at me and I'd get killed. And although you can use Torrent on Elden Beast, I think it kind of makes it harder because he can like hit you off Torrent and shit like that. But if you're on the floor, like all his attacks are super easily predictable and just pretty easy to dodge. So honestly, that fight was pretty easy. And with that, I'll show you the last couple seconds of gameplay. And just like that, I've beaten Elden Ring with another challenge being added on top of itself after every boss. Now, I know these weren't the hardest challenges, but in general, Elden Ring is a pretty hard game if you don't have a very viable build. So for me, this was fun, and this was hard. Thank you guys so much for watching. Check out these videos, and see ya.